call this meeting to order. Bennington Select Board on Monday, January 23rd, 6 p.m. And can I ask, Justin, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we've got two sets of minutes to approve. The first one is January 7th.
I'll move they be accepted as printed.
Okay, got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Okay, any discussion? For the audience, this is the first meeting we had on our budget. It was in the town office. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One abstention?
Yep.
Okay. The next one is for January 9th, our regular meeting.
I'll move those also be accepted as printed.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second. Any discussion on the minutes, January 9th? Not all in favor? And that is unanimous. Okay. Next item, the warrants. John, we'll start at your end this time.
There's on page 1 of 11, 300, 219, professional services, Aldridge and Elliott.
Yes, they're the engineering firm that we have hired to do the wastewater treatment plant review. It's the 25-year life study, actually required by the state of Vermont.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, I'm fine, thank you.
Jason?
I'm okay.
Sharon?
No, nothing.
Chris?
Nope.
Justin?
Yes, let's see. Page 6 of 11, 300, 270, pet services, 51625. Infinity Pet Services, it's listed as.
Let me see, let me get my bearings here. Yeah, I can't tell you. It's probably has to do with either fixing or medical services for a cat or a dog that was taken into custody.
Isn't that a cremation service for animals? I think that's what that is. What Infinity is. I think that's a cremation service.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, Sharon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, never mind.
But thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Justin?
No, that was the only one I had a question. No, all set.
Okay. And I don't have any questions on it. Okay, the next item is citizens. Any citizens out there have anything you want to say? Joanne?
She's going to be a regular.
I rarely have to bend over anyway, I'm so short. But thanks for asking. Before I go through the litany of things that are going on, I would like to thank everybody who came to the Chamber's annual dinner meeting on Friday night. I think everybody who came knows what a wonderful time we had. The Prescriptions outdid themselves as a dance band, and while I gave out our awards, and two of the recipients are sitting right here, our President's Award went to Joe Krozik for his outstanding service to the community. And Sharon Brush represented the People's United Bank, who received our Chamber Community Partner Award. So I wanted to thank both of them personally tonight. And we also gave out our Hospitality Award, which went to Kim Wasick, and D. Edmore Chamber Award went to the Baker family for all the service they've provided to us over the last few years. So thanks, everybody. And before we get going on the serious matters, just want to remind everybody that tomorrow from 4 to 6 in the same room will be the Composites Conference, which is sponsored by Bennington County Industrial Corporation. And there'll be quite a few very special speakers, and I think that the community will find it very interesting. Also, on the 28th, which is next Saturday, is our annual Winterfest in North Bennington. So all day, we help to flesh out activities around the Penguin Plunge, which raises money for Special Olympics in Vermont. And you can pick up the hand-drawn map at any of the venues in North Bennington. Bring the kids, spend the day, go have a lot of fun. Just walk around and enjoy it. And on February 20th, we're going to have our second legislative breakfast at the Hampton Inn. This was highly successful on the 16th. We had a huge crowd, and we're probably going to have the Bennington Economic Development Task Force there, as well as, we hope, the board members of the Bennington County Industrial Corporation. So it's going to be packed. Come and learn about what the legislators are doing and tell them what you think your needs are here in our community. So at that, I have other things, but I'll let you get on with business. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, any other citizens? Okay, we got a public hearing scheduled for 6:15, and I've only got 5 after 6 right now, so let's go with the BCIC loan revision discussion. Were they going to be here? Yes. They were going to be here in person? Okay. Liquor licenses?
I can circulate those for signature.
Circulate those. And manager's report.
I don't believe that I have a manager's report for you this evening. Thought I'd take the night off, but perhaps I should have tried to do something. Anyway, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you tonight.
Okay. So we'll get right into other business. Chris, start down your end.
I have nothing tonight, thanks, sir.
Okay.
I have nothing, Joe.
John?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Jason?
Not tonight.
Okay. Sharon?
I think you're going to strike out.
Matt?
I got a couple for you.
Go for it.
Stu had been meaning to ask this, and apparently we got the word from you that I can remember this correctly, the south wall and the east wall at the rec center, or one of the walls and the roof were good.
Well, yeah, the report is that the interior wall, the east wall of the pool area, appears to be in pretty good shape. They were trying to do, last I was told, they were trying to do one more cut into the wall to check one last pillar. The roof, they have stripped down to the bare layers. It appears that there's plenty of insulation and vapor barrier there, so we may be able to get away with simply redoing the roof surface itself, which will save a pretty good chunk of change. The west wall and the south wall has to be repointed. The west wall is the one that would have to come down, and ultimately what they're going to try to do is pull it out slightly. It's the wall that has got those little cantilevered windows in it. They're going to try to pull it out a little bit and create some sitting area for the swim teams and others who want to just have bleacher space there, which I think will be really good for the people who use the pool.
Is that, I guess what I was getting to on that, if I was hearing that correct, does that lower our engineering costs for that?
It may not lower the engineering costs.
Design, whatever?
Perhaps. If we're finding that there's not as much design work necessary, we may not spend the entire $50,000 that you authorized. But it certainly should lower the construction cost. But that really depends on the bids and how things are when it comes out.
Okay. Secondly, I see everybody got that letter. I talked to you there last week about the dog situation on Squaw Hill.
Yes,
Do you have any answers on that?
I don't have any answers. I did pass it on to the chief of police and through the chief to animal control. I haven't heard, and that letter came in actually the day after the meeting, I believe, and so I really haven't followed up myself on it, Matt.
Okay. Is there, if the town hasn't been diligent in taking action, are we liable at all if there's an incident with animals bit or people bit?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say it really would depend on whether we were simply unable to get there or negligent. In other words, we went there, we didn't do what we were supposed to do. We didn't take appropriate action. I suppose that would be something that the court would decide.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jason.
Something did come to mind. Stu, it's 2 complaints, but they're from the same person, so I don't know if that counts as 1 complaint or 2 complaints about the fact that we can't nobody can turn in used oil anymore up at the dump because it needs to be empty. They're unable to receive oil, so
That,
can you just call up to Casella and figure
It's all-
out how we can get it?
we took oil out of there, I'm going to say either last week.
Well, I hope the person who was complaining is watching that tonight, because I got the complaint on Saturday. So if he's watching, I hope he's paying
Oh,
attention.
yeah, the tank was emptied unless we picked up 500 gallons of oil.
Well, the first complaint was about 10 days ago, and the second complaint was 2 days ago. So I have a feeling he didn't make the attempt last weekend.
Yeah, no, we pulled some 468 gallons out of the tank.
Okay, thanks.
Wow, I didn't think that tank was that big.
Is that it, Jason?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay, for the public, while we're waiting here, a couple things. One, as you've been reading the paper, you probably know the board here, Select Board, is putting a lot of time and effort in this year's budget. We've already had 3 meetings on, and we're going to have another one this Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring it to a conclusion there to where we can have a budget that we're willing to prepare or willing to present to the public in March, March 5th, I think, is Town Hall Day. We've had a lot of good briefings from our staff, from the manager, and from the agencies that's appeared in front of us, but we're really paying attention to this. We want to make sure that we do a good job and present a budget that will be acceptable to the taxpayers. As you'll see, we're providing the services that we're required to do as a town, and also trying to stay ahead of the things that we've got to, such as the transportation network and the water system and things of that sort. So just want you to know we're putting a lot of time there. For the board members, in our packet was an application put out by the League of Cities and Towns for municipal local government day at the legislature. I'm just curious if anybody wants to go. Maybe we carpool on up. If you haven't been before, it's a pretty good day. We all know our legislators. That's one of the good things, being a small state like this. We get to know them personally, but you may find it interesting if you want to sit in some of the committees and see what takes place, if there's something of interest. So I'll just throw that out. If you think you want to go, let me know, and if we can carpool up, it'll save a trip. But it's a worthwhile day. Let's see if I got anything else. Okay, we still don't have anybody from BCIC here? Not yet. Okay. Anybody else want to say something? We still got about 4 minutes before we have the public hearing. Come on up, Patrick.
Wouldn't ordinarily do this, but...
That's all right.
I know there was some talk about this before, and especially since Joanne's here, about the Welcome Center.
Okay.
But I have talked to Commissioner Obahowski, and he says that they have found the extra money. So it's going forward with all the features that was presented to you, and they're going to do a groundbreaking in spring. So
That's great. That's good news.
there seems to be some good news about this
Yeah.
after some time of...
Thanks for that information. That's news to us. That's good news. So.
There's an article about it in the Herald.
You telling me?
www.rutlandherald.com.
You're going to have
Scoop the
paid
banner, is that what
advertisement
you're
over
saying?
that.
Good to me.
That was a cheap plug.
Okay. Okay, I think it's close enough to
Come on, Neil, do you want to say something?
the public hearing. Larry or Kevin, you want to come up to the mic, one of you?
Joe, I need to recuse
Yep.
myself on this one.
Yeah, okay, we have 2 members who need to recuse themselves from the public hearing.
Hello. Well, the good news is, we did have 2 negative water tests back in December. The bad news is, it wasn't witnessed by his engineer
Okay.
or myself. We did have a site visit, and Joe was there, and Mr. Bashy, and Larry, and myself. And we agreed to the water test to be witnessed by myself, and let's see, who else? By John's engineer. And we also agreed that he would start making improvements to the water system. That's my recollection. Is that
Right.
correct, Joe? Yeah. Not much has been done to our understanding. And right now, I guess he is chlorinating the water with pool tablets and bleach, according to his own engineer. And I don't know about you, but I don't think pool tablets is the right thing to chlorinate a water system. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
And maybe I was remembering this wrong, but or the town was going to take the tests and perform the tests. Wasn't that what we decided at the last meeting? I thought the town with
I think we offered
them there
Yeah.
to witness where it was going to be how the testing was done. We were going to take a chlorine test and make sure it didn't have chlorine, and then we were going to send the sample up.
But it does have chlorine, and they say they're actually chlorinating the system. So we knew that already.
So is that the reason for the, sorry, John, I didn't mean to jump in.
That's okay, Judge.
Is that what you're saying? Is you saying that's the reason for the negative test right now because it's being chlorinated with tablets, or?
That's, in my opinion, yes.
According to my recollection, there was supposed to be a period of time where the chlorine would go out of the system.
Right.
Then we were going to test, you guys were going to either supervise or perform the tests for the fact that there would be no chlorine in that system.
Right. That's right.
Now, according to what you've just told us, there has not been a time when there has not been chlorine in it, and you can't test because
That's correct.
there is no, the system has not been flushed of chlorine.
Correct. When we had our site visit back in December, Mr. Bashish said that he was going to chlorinate the system, and he has been right along.
So basically, you guys are continually at ground zero and unable to perform the correct test.
Well, that's why our recommendation is that there needs to be continual testing. He hasn't corrected the system to the satisfaction of the state engineer.
Right.
And until he does, the system is at risk. Mr. Bashish indicated at the site visit that he's going to keep chlorinated no matter what. He's concerned that if he doesn't, and if he has a positive result, that he's going to have issues with the tenants of the park. So it was his position during the site visit that he was going to chlorinate no matter what. And that's okay. Most of these systems that are regulated are chlorinated.
Correct.
But his current method of chlorination is probably not optimum, but since it's not a regulated system, he is allowed to do that. But it's our thought that at least the best thing to do, minimum, until he fixes the system to the state's requirement, is to have Mr. Bashish do sampling twice a month, witnessed by Kevin or his engineer, documented, and until he can fix it. I think it's risky to not be testing that until the system is fixed.
My only concern here is the fact that we're using our personnel to supervise someone who will not conform to the request. Our personnel, you and either or you, are being taken out of regular duties and are now supervising a chlorination test. Or,
Well, that's why we're suggesting that his engineer oversee it, witnessed.
right, well, as long as we're not losing valuable personnel to some service that an individual will not conform to. That's my concern.
What are the levels for safe chlorination? I mean, there's got to be a point where it's not safe to drink, and I don't know how you regulate.
I think that the town is at, what, 1.2 is what we run ours at, like, I guess.
He should be doing a chlorine residual test when he does these tests. He should be checking that level when he's treating his system either with bleach or pool tablets. We don't know if he is. He's not mandated by the state to do that because he's not a regulated system. He falls underneath that threshold where he has to be regulated, but until he gets that system fixed to the satisfaction of the state engineer.
So how, I guess, so who does it fall on? Our health officer to make sure that the residents in that park are safe? I mean, is that?
That's the role of us and the Board of Health, is to ensure the public health.
I think that somewhere we need to find whatever the chlorine levels that are unsafe for people to be drinking. I mean, if we can't regulate whether he chlorinates the system or not, we've got to be able to take testing and find out what the thresholds are for chlorine in the water. I mean, that's the issue with the people now. I'm sure with the chlorine or the bleach or whatever, it's killed whatever is in there. But
It has.
now, is it an unsafe chlorine level for people to be drinking? And, I mean, I think that, to me, that's priority number one, to find out what that level is. And if we're going to be testing for the other one, I think we need to be testing for that, too.
Tenants report a strong smell of chlorine when they shower.
So the town hasn't done any testing to check the chlorine level at all since this process began, or?
Yeah, we have. When we started the process, then we scheduled a site visit with the state engineer, and then we came to an agreement of who was going to do what.
On the 8th, let me interject here. On the 8th of December, we went to site visit to Trailer Park. It was agreed upon by Dave Swift, who's the engineer, state engineer, Mr. Bashy, his father was there also, along with Kevin in there. We talked about when the test could be performed, so the water was flushed out or the chlorine was flushed out before the test could be performed. Actually, we mapped out the days that could be done. When I left there, the agreement was, as I saw it, is that 2 tests were required. However, under supervision, either the town or Mr. Endress, who's now the engineer, hired by Mr. Bashy up there to send those forward at Mr. Bashy's expense to let us know. The other thing is that until we heard from Dave Swift that the physical conditions have been repaired, that we would maintain requiring the bi-weekly testing until those things were performed. If you look at the letter, I guess it's Exhibit 4 you got in your packet here. And what I see it's important is that last paragraph by Dave Swift. As indicated in my 5 January 2012 email to you, the recent work performed by the park owner did not satisfy those requirements for physical system upgrade. So no resolution of these deficiencies is a more immediate issue for me than the significance of the December water quality results or the chlorination procedures. So, I mean, to me, and I think that's what we understood out there, that had to be done before we could lift this order, according to Swift, out of the Agency of Natural Resources, those have not been performed to the satisfaction of the state. So I see where we can't do anything except follow the recommendations given to us by Larry and Kevin, where it says until the system is repaired and approved by the state, we'll continue the bi-weekly water testing paid for by Mr. Mashy and witnessed by an engineer or town official before we can lift that ban. So I mean, that's where I'm coming down on this.
And as part of that, we can then do the chlorine residual.
Right.
I think we need to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
obviously, you could put enough chlorine or bleach into it to kill whatever it is to get, negative results all the time. But, at that point, I'm more concerned about what the residents up there are drinking than.
We agree.
Hopefully they're not drinking it. We advise them not to drink.
By just bathing and washing.
Yeah, hopefully.
So the tests in the past were, the last round of tests was supposed to be done in your presence or the presence of his engineer, and that didn't happen, correct?
Correct.
How can we move forward this time? What can we do to ensure that happens, going forward with your recommendation that you have now?
It would take an action, Justin, by the Board of Health, which is the sitting select board.
But what I'm saying is, last time, that was the recommendation that the town be able to monitor those tests or the engineer, and you're saying that you weren't allowed to or that wasn't able to take place.
Right.
So we're essentially going forward with the same recommendation.
But ultimately, it would be a violation of a health order if it continues.
We weren't allowed to, we just weren't told about it.
Okay, well.
Big difference.
Mr. Martha, do you want to come up to the mic? You want to address any of this?
Just quickly, what is the penalty for violating the health order?
That I'd have to ask Larry and Kevin to tell us what those are.
Well, let's let Mr. Martha go ahead and address what we've talked about so far, and we'll get Larry back up there.
Okay, so
I don't think the board has the authority to continue this emergency health order. The authority under which it was originally issued was a violation of the rental housing code. And in reviewing the rental housing code and the information that the board has before it, there's no reason to believe that the court, or that the board has the authority to continue the order. Now, I understand that Mr. Goodhue and Mr. McLeod have some concerns about the functioning of the water system.
Well, the state also has some concerns.
The state, you obviously have more information than I do, because I contacted David Swift after Kevin Goodhue forwarded me an email indicating that David had some issues, and I asked him to spell out what those issues were for me in writing, by telephoning, doing something, and I never heard back from him. So I'm not exactly sure what it is that you folks are looking at, but I think you referred to a letter, right?
An email was sent down here.
An email.
I got an email from Kevin Goodhue forwarding David Swift's email that was dated January 4, but that's the only thing that I ever received. So I'm at a disadvantage if you're looking at something different.
Okay. Well,
but I did ask David Swift to spell out specifically what his objections were to the changes and upgrades to the physical system that John had performed, and he has failed to do that at this point in time. ANR has not taken any action, and quite frankly, the Board of Health has no authority to speculate as to whether the state will or won't do something. There are no tests right now which would indicate that the system is not in conformance with state regulations. There's no E. coli positive test. There's no test to indicate that there's excessive chlorine. So with the system otherwise being in conformance, I have a difficult time seeing how the board can continue in emergency.
There's no test, or no test has been taken for excessive chlorine.
There have been no tests. Well, the water testing company that my client uses is Endyne. They test for chlorine if they detect the presence of chlorine through odor. So they did not test for chlorine when he submitted those samples. The only test for chlorine that was done by the town in mid-November of 2011, and the level of chlorine was 1.51, which is slightly above the level of chlorine that the town maintains in its water.
So is the water system currently being chlorinated at this time?
The water system is being chlorinated. That's allowed by Vermont law. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that was my understanding, and I wasn't present for the meeting where the board chair was present with my client and the engineer from ANR, but it was my understanding that one of the outcomes of that meeting was to debunk the idea that Mr. Goodhue and Mr. McLeod had, that somehow this water system was not allowed to be chlorinated. Because I think that's really how that was presented at this last meeting, that he was chlorinating the water that he shouldn't be, and therefore we want to test for chlorine and E. coli. But David's quite clear, in my understanding, the board chair can correct that if I'm incorrect, that he's more than, Vermont law allows him to chlorinate. So I think there are limits as to how much chlorine is in the water, absolutely. But there's no indication that he's violating any of that.
so how about if we say he violated the health order that we presented him, that he needed to test under supervision of town officials or an engineer, which he did not perform?
I mean,
we issued in our last, as I recall, our last meeting, we said that the test had to be conducted under the supervision of an engineer, his engineer, or our town officials. They were conducted, but they weren't conducted under supervision.
But I think this goes back to the jurisdiction of the original health order, the emergency health order that was issued. In other words, what's the basis for issuing that order, and does a valid basis still exist going forward? The basis for issuing the original health order was that the water supply was not in conformance with the Vermont rental, I always mess up the name, rental housing health code. And that it was not otherwise in conformance with state law. But the fact of the matter is, what we have at this point in time is a notice of alleged violation issued by ANR against which they have taken no action, and some tests which were performed which indicated the presence of E. coli, and the fact that my client's now chlorinating, and that there have been a number of clean tests since the original dirty test came back, including the most recent test in December. You are correct, though, I believe, when you state, Mr. Chair, that the original agreement had been that the test would be taken in the presence of the town health officer or my client's engineer, and they were not.
Is there a reason Any reason why that wasn't done in that manner, or?
With regards to my client's engineer, I think it was just a matter of scheduling. He doesn't work in town any longer. And I know that my client had been working to get him to the property for a period of time without success. With regards to why the town was not involved, frankly, I wasn't there. I don't have any firsthand information.
Larry, was your office contacted at all during that period of time?
No.
So you were unaware that they were even coming down and working on it? Would you confidently drink a glass of water in that trailer park by any chance?
I would. My client
I'm glad
chlorinates
you
the
would,
water on a
because
regular basis.
I certainly wouldn't at this point.
You know, I think that if you look at the history here, I think there are 3 dirty tests over a period of like 3 years. And I really think that that the town is hitching its wagon, or hitching itself to a wagon which isn't going anywhere, or hasn't gone anywhere thus far, which is allegations made by A&R which are as yet unlitigated and unsubstantiated. So,
Let me ask another question. How many calls do you think your office would get if the town had 3 dirty tests in 3 years and didn't contact and notify any of the residents of the town of Bennington?
I don't represent the town, those are Rob Wilmington, so.
I understand that, but I have a feeling that there'd be some.
Look, I want to be
serious-
clear that my client thinks that the safety of the water system there is important. He's made a number of the changes that David Swift had suggested that he make. He was in process of doing some work when his engineer issued a statement to David Swift about the progress of that report. But he has taken most of the steps that David Swift had asked for. He's sealed up the system. He's regraded around the water house, for lack of a better way to put it. He's rebuilt some of that building. There is some additional grading to be done, but he was doing it in December, and he just kind of got lucky in terms of the ground freeze when he was able to work on it. So,
I guess my question would be, though, if the water's been chlorinated this entire time, which I believe everybody agrees it has, how is the Board of Health to know whether the root cause of the problem has been alleviated through the work that he's done?
I think what the Board of Health needs to ask itself is there a legal basis for continuing the emergency health order? And you can't really go on speculation and conjecture. If you have evidence that there's a problem with the water system, act on it. But at this point in time, the board has no evidence before it that there's an existing problem with the water system.
I think that the legal standing is it wasn't followed to the order that was put out last time. It says in the letter here that a water sample had already been taken late in the afternoon as of 13 December 2011, was planning on taking another sample late afternoon of 14 December 2011. I'm almost positive that it was 2 weeks. It was either a week or 2 weeks that were supposed to be between the tests, according to the order last time. Is that?
You know, I'd have to, frankly, I don't recall whether there was supposed to be time between the tests or not. I would need to review the order to respond to that. So I'm looking through the packet right now, but.
Because the order as it stood last time, I believe, was
I don't think it's in there.
there were supposed to be 2 samples taken, and I can't say 100% as to what the time duration was, but there was to be engineer present or town official present. There was to be no chlorination in the system when the tests were taken. And obviously, I think that the testing, I think that it says on here, have you chlorinated your water source recently within 2 weeks? It's yes on both of these things. So it wasn't followed according to the way the health order was. I mean, that hasn't been satisfied as to what this board put forth the last time.
But I think the question that the board needs to ask itself is, do you have the authority to set standards that are above and beyond what the state of Vermont requires in terms of water quality? And I think the answer to that is no. You know, the order that this board issued may have said no chlorination, but I think the basis of that was the statements made at the last hearing, which seemed to indicate that Mr. McLeod and Mr. Goodhue believed that he was not allowed to chlorinate, and that's not, in fact, the case.
No, we didn't believe that was the case at all. He is allowed to chlorinate. as an unregulated system or regulated, he can chlorinate. But this has been a history of a mobile home park, an emergency health order that was issued, that not any part of it was ever followed. He didn't notify the tenants of the problem. He didn't provide the drinking water as required. And it wasn't until the positive test of E. coli was brought to the attention of the park owner that then suddenly chlorination occurred. So the Board of Health's role is to mitigate public health risks. The initial health order that was issued was based on, regulations for the Rental Housing Health Code. He's obligated to provide proper drinking water, and at one point he didn't, and that's why we issued the order. But we had other conditions in there that he needed to meet, and he didn't.
What about the rest of the conditions? Were those outlined? The ones that were in the order, is that outlined in whatever the rental housing unit, whatever that is? Were those outlined in there, the 2 tests,
No.
I mean, is there any basis on our part to, I mean, basically what I think we're hearing from Mr. Bashi's attorney is we don't have any standing to ask him to do any of that stuff.
I believe you do. As the Board of Health, you can take whatever action you need to do to mitigate a public health risk. And we believe that there's a risk in this park. Based on Mr. Swift's evaluation of the system that's there, in addition to what Joe pointed out, if you look at Exhibit 4, page 3 of 3 in his email, he points out that based on the information contained in Mr. Ender's report and his discussion that morning, it's evident that some aspects of the remedial improvements to the water source are, in Mr. Swift's opinion, both significantly inconsistent with the approved concept and sustainability unacceptable as a potential final resolution of the system's noted deficiencies. Consequently, I'm in the process of determining the best option for addressing this latest unfortunate development, which requires some consultation with program management and legal staff. This system is risky. It has a structure component to the system that is not in compliance with the state standards, the engineer.
Well, I was there, 2 of the residents of the area talked to me, and both of those were purchasing drinking water. They will not drink water from that system. They fear that system. Even though it's chlorinated, they feel it because of the E. coli test that came up before. They're worried about whether that'll ever occur again. I'm willing to take the risk that it's not in our authority to protect the health of the people out there until proven different, that we don't have the authority to keep this into effect. You know, it's up to the rest of the board.
Before we get that far in,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Larry, do you feel that when we left this hearing the last time, that there was an agreement, a verbal agreement, a verbal contract between us and the landowner, the park owner, to follow the regulations that we believed, as you heard from each and every one of us here, we believed was the specific agreement? Do you believe you had a contract, a verbal agreement?
In addition to that, John, at the site visit, when Joe was there, Mr. Bashi and his dad, and Kevin and I, we made it really clear. You correct the problems identified by Dave Swift, you get 2 consecutive good test results, we're going away. And I think that's a quote.
The reason I pointed that out was whether or not this board has the authority or has been granted the authority, or whether or not it is unreasonable for us to ask for this particular procedure to go forward. I truly believe that we had a good faith agreement when that hearing was completed, and that good faith agreement was violated. It was not followed through exactly to the tenor and the tone of the decision at the end of this hearing. So that, I think, is more the issue here than whether or not we're overstepping our bounds or whether or not we had the legal right. There was an agreement, there was a promise that certain things would be done, and they were not done. So as far as I'm concerned, that to me is a more important issue. Of course, the health and safety of this community is the paramount issue. But in regards to the other matter, whether we have the legal right or that would have to be fought out in court or whatever, There was a verbal agreement made, and that agreement was not followed through with.
Stuart, do you have a sign-in sheet for people who might want to testify?
I didn't think to bring that with
Is there a
me,
piece
Joe.
of paper we can do?
I'm going to try to
I'm going to
find
ask, are there any residents out there who would like to speak to this? I see some residents here at the motor park. Would you like to speak to this?
I think you pretty much covered it. The concern is there is chlorine in the water, and, you know.
Could I have your name, please, so we can have this? Get that, Stuart?
And
Yeah.
it's a strong smell when you turn on the faucet.
Right.
My concern is just that the water is taken care of, that it can be safe to be drank, you know? And that's why we're here,
Yeah.
is to encourage you people to do what's right for us and the other people in the park.
I've got to say that I tend to lean with Joe on this one. I think that, you know, if it turns out that we're overstepping our bounds on this, I'll be the first one to tell you I'm sorry, but I think at this point, until we find out that we don't have the authority to do this, I think that we've got to put this order, keep it on, and have it enforced, you know, until it's corrected or until somebody from the state says you don't have the authority for that. And at that point, we'll find out who does, and they can deal with it. But I can't, in clear conscience, send this out of here without have some protection for those residents in place until a future date that we find out that we don't have the grounds to do this or the system is remedied.
So I guess I got to ask Larry or Kevin, what teeth does the health board have? Obviously, what we've already tried to do is not encouraging the owner to take the steps required by either the state or that we told before. What teeth do we have now to make sure that the health order that we're continuing is in effect and it is complied with?
So if it's not followed, the board could ask council to file suit in court to have a judge enforce the order.
Okay. So from that, for here, let's, well, you've heard my statement. I want to keep this in order. Can I get a motion to, from the health board here? That's where the health board now, Board of Health rather, to keep the order in place.
I'll make the motion for that. I'll second that.
Have a second? Any discussion on it?
Yeah, just quickly, it states in the regulations they're supposed to provide water to the residents, and that is not happening at this time?
I don't believe so. That was,
Okay. All right, that answered that. So I'll need to have a motion, have a second. Any further discussion? All in
Joe.
favor?
before, if we could just clarify that under the recommendation that we're asking that they have water testing by twice a month, paid for by Mr. Bashy and witnessed by the engineer or town official.
That's correct.
Twice a month or bi-weekly?
Says bi-weekly in the,
I mean, twice a month, we could be back into the situation of taking a
It
sample
could be
on
a Tuesday
on the
and a
13th
Wednesday of
and
the
the
last
14th.
week of the month. It's got to be bi-weekly.
Yes.
Okay.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? So that's 5 votes, 2 abstentions. Stuart, also, I'd like for you to get a hold of our council and map out what we have to do to be able to enforce this health order.
Yep, will do.
Report back to us at our next meeting. Okay. Can I have a motion to close this public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Will our other members rejoin us? Jason here?
Jason grabbed one of the BCIC.
Okay.
Good to know.
At the last meeting, we decided that was going to be done.
So what happened?
I thought we should be under the session.
Continue the order.
We're talking executive session.
As soon as he gets two positive tests that are supervised and are not chlorinated well, he'll be all set.
We have the minutes. What meeting was that?
This is great.
Recess for 2 hours.
We take a quick
Yeah. We're going to take a quick recess here for about 2 minutes. We need to discuss, what meeting was that?
I think it was
December
at the last meeting.
7th.
Is that in our minutes here?
Well, the memo came out December 7th.
What are we looking at?
The memo?
Just take a short recess.
That was our last board meeting?
Yeah.
It wasn't our last board meeting. I don't know if it was in those minutes or not.
Discussion. And who's going to speak to this?
I'll introduce the two gentlemen. Doug Ball from TD Bank is the current BCIC Board President, and Bob Plunkett is the incoming BCIC Board President, so they're here to answer your questions.
Okay, Doug, the reason we wanted you here is you put a request in that we take a look at the situation we have with BCIC.
Yes, sir.
And we understand you were going to the state also, but we're not going to make a decision on this here. We'd just like to know from your standpoint, where does BCIC stand right now and what are we trying to do with this revision discussion?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is we're in talks with, obviously, the state of Vermont. As you know, Challenges for Change, which were initiated a couple of years ago, has had a profound impact on the funding sources for RDCs throughout the state. The situation that BCIC is in is identical to every other RDC across the footprint here, with the exception of Brattleboro. They have an incredible real estate portfolio, and they really don't need any state funding whatsoever. But that being said, it was my decision, actually, until Montpelier can come up with a different funding mechanism for the RDCs, that we go out to our creditors and ask for a 12-month moratorium on the principal payments on our loan across our entire debt. That would equate to about $22,000 on an annual basis. And the reason for doing so is we didn't want to come to the town and say, gee, we'd like the town to come in and help funding BCIC. We're the only RDC in the state of Vermont that gets no support from the communities we serve. Every other community throughout the state funds their RDCs. We don't get that from this community. So what we wanted to do is, rather than, with our hat in our hands, say, gee, we need funding support, and reading the newspapers and seeing all the other agencies that are desperately seeking funding, we felt, gee, if we could just ask for a moratorium on the principal portion of our loans for that 12-month period of time, it would accomplish pretty much the same thing for us. That pretty much closes our budget gap for 2012. We also have been very successful. BCIC is not a 501c3. We are a shareholder corporation. And we've been very, actually, you've spearheaded this, we've been very successful in the last month or two in having a lot more shareholders want to join the group. We've raised, what would you say we've raised so far?
I would think we've raised close to
$20,000. You know, the hospitals come on board and Plaisance come on board, and I'm not sure how many others it's been an outpouring of support from the business community, which is wonderful. So I can see where people have angst, because I think we sent you our financial statements, and you're probably like doing the math, boy, these guys put like 18 to 24 months and we're up in smoke. That's really not where we are today. But that's not to say that we don't need to continue to fundraise and to continue to strive to have Montpelier change our funding mechanism. Dick Sears and Senator Hartwell have been extremely helpful. They're extremely supportive of what we're doing. And we feel that that will change within the next 6 months. So that being said, that's pretty much where we are today.
Any board members have any questions?
Where other than the fundraising do you see, and no offense, but looking at the financial statements, I would say 18 to 24 months was probably generous.
Right.
How do you see that drastic of a change that our one-year moratorium on this?
Well, if you look at because we're both commercial bankers, that's what we do. You take the $20,000 that we've raised, the $22,000 that would save with the principal savings on the loans, et cetera, there's $45,000 right there. I think our deficit for last year, I'm going to say was $70,000. So when you look at where we are with our funding with the state and the steps that we've taken, we've pretty much...
Yeah, we do get some funding from the state on an annual basis. I think the biggest asset that we have is Shields Drive, McNeely Park, which we are actively trying to sell those lots up there. We have a major real estate company out of Albany that is processing or hopefully going to be selling some of those lots up there. And the reason why we picked Albany was because these people are also tied in very closely with what's going on in the nanotech industry in Albany, and also is tied in very closely with what's going on in Malta over by Saratoga with Global Foundries over there. That particular company is going to be looking for a lot of subcontractors to move close to where they are in Malta. The company that we have in Albany is confident that some of those subcontractors will probably want to come over here. The drive from here to Saratoga isn't that bad, and they will be subcontractors or suppliers for Global Foundries. So that is where we're really looking for our largest influx of cash for, hopefully for this year. We can't guarantee that, obviously, but hopefully for this year, be able to sell a lot or two up there and be able to, again, get back on solid footing again and begin to make our principal payments again to our creditors.
Is that a new direction with the assistance from the company in Albany to move some of that property up there?
That's a contract we entered into probably 6 months ago.
Yes.
It's CBR, Richard Ellis. They're nationwide. So not only are we marketing ourselves within the Albany community, but we've gone nationwide which is one of the reasons we wanted to choose them. We wanted to gain much more visibility than just a regional.
But it is a new focus for us, going to a large company like that instead of using somebody locally. As Doug said, they have the contracts or the contacts not just in the capital region but also countrywide. That's not to say we're going to get somebody from California, but I think that we're really looking at the influx of subcontractors coming in from nanotech in Albany and also for Global Foundries.
We'll keep hearing the emphasis on composites here. We're having a briefing here, I think, tomorrow or next day. And is what we're about to hear tomorrow from these composite, I mean, are there any leads there that some of these folks might be willing to move, or new folks might be able to move up into this area?
Well, I think what we're hoping is that we're going to get some new people to come in into our new composites industry. But again, I think what we're going to be looking at are probably some small subcontractors that are going to be supplying, and I've forgotten the new company for Vermont Composites, but not just for Vermont Composites, but also Plaisance. And hopefully with the new owner of Vermont Composites, who is out of Connecticut. They're going to have some contacts. They're going to come in and hopefully look at Bennington. Plasan, we all know what they're doing right now, and they're going great guns, not just in the...
and just within that composite sector, they're all at this point out of space. They're all bursting at the seams,
Right.
and they are going to need to expand. And we have the only shovel-ready project with the permits in place.
Yep.
Please do. So
that's also what our other possibility is, local companies being able to expand and maybe build a larger building to supply their growth.
And just the conversations we've had with Dick Sears and Senator Hartwell and Bob Bostic, Senator Leahy, et cetera, they recognize that what they are doing with the fundings of the RDCs is terribly flawed. We put together analysis for them and just showed the jobs we created in 2011, and it was over 150 jobs that we brought to this community, and our reward for that, we get nothing. So whether we don't create a single job or we create thousands of jobs, our revenue is flat, and that has to change. And they recognize that.
Well, I said at the time, the challenge to change was a gimmick to get us through that budget year. And I remember getting in the fight about the RDCs and bringing folks up to Montpelier to dodge the bullet that year on a lot of it. And I'm glad that Senator Leahy thinks that there might be some help there, and I know that Dick and Bob are working hard on it. It is a dicey thing. One of the things is people complain that, you brought up Brattleboro. Everybody looks at Brattleboro, and that was one of the examples they threw up there. Why is Brattleboro doing so well and the other RDCs are flat? And not all of them are the same, as you know, and as you stated. And I know my comment at the time was, we don't want them all to be the same. We want them to be tailored to the community they support.
Exactly.
And I guess they probably bought that to save off, when we had that fight 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But any other board members have any questions?
I just have one comment. I'm going to be perfectly frank. I really feel as a board member that we are not being included in on all the activities going on.
Well, Mr. Hurd is invited to every monthly meeting, and Mr.
Let John
Murphy
Can I
also.
finish?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
A lot of the information we get is repetitive and redundant. A lot of the information we get is boilerplate. And a lot of the information we get is secondhand. And if you want us to be on your team and play with you, you got to include us. And and if that means that your director has to come in here every other meeting and give us some heads up, we don't want a fancy report. We'd also like it in English. That's another thing. I'm going to be perfectly frank with you. We'd like it so that the average person who's watching on TV today can understand what your plans are. You can't give away your secrets, I know that. You can't tell people things that may be sensitive, or a deal might blow up because you went out to the public or the media reported it, and I understand that. We also have executive sessions, and that means you could come and talk to us in an executive session situation if it becomes necessary. But an open dialogue is going to be very important if we are going to continue to play the role we play and/or increase our activity. I have read things in the paper after the fact and not been told what was going on, and it really made me upset. It made me, I'll be honest with you. All right. And I'm not blaming you gentlemen, because you guys are doing the very best you can. You want Bennington. I know this guy wants Bennington to succeed. Him and I have been around a long time.
Long time, John.
And he wants Bennington to succeed, and I know you do too, because if the community's doing good, your bank's doing good, and that's good too. But right now, I feel very uncomfortable, and I would like to see something change. I would like to see some management plan changing in your organization. I thank you for listening to me.
Well,
go ahead.
I guess my comment to that is that our meetings, which are held on a monthly basis up at TD Bank, are certainly open to the public. And we have there's a number of individuals that are invited to come to our meetings. Scott Murphy does in fact come to our meetings every month.
Religiously.
Mostly every month, I should say. And Stu is invited to come every month. I know he's awfully busy, and it's probably very difficult for him to come on a Friday morning to come to our meetings. So, but there are, any one of the board members are certainly welcome to come to our meetings. But if it's something where you'd like us to come in on every other month or on a quarterly basis to report to you of what's going on, the stuff that we can provide information for, because as you all know, we deal with some confidential information that can't be let out relatively soon, we would be more than happy to do that. There was a time, and I've been on the BCIC board now for roughly 25 years, there was a time when there was in existence what they used to call the A-team. And this was back when NASDAQ first came to town. And we had an A-team which was part of, it was BCIC, it was the Select Board, it was some town employees. I'm not sure if the BBC was in existence back then, but it may have been the Chamber. And we had an A-team that used to come and do our dog and pony show to all the companies that were looking to come in and support NASDAQ and even NASDAQ itself. And maybe it's time to put that back together again. I'm not so sure, but we would certainly be more than happy to report to the Select Board, either in an open meeting, which we certainly
I don't want you to get the idea we're sitting here enthroned, summoning you to our presence.
No.
I just want you to know that we want to, this is a different board. This is a new board, okay? This board wants to be active. We've brought all the charitable organizations in, we've brought all the service-connected groups in. They are coming in here and telling us what's new and exciting, and that's what we want from you. What's new and exciting? Right. We don't care about the nuts and the bolts and the everyday activities, but I'd like to hear about what your director is doing. I'd like to know where the last place he was and what kind of conferences or what kind of training he might have received. These are the things that we'd like to know, that something is really happening. And then, if there is something new and exciting, we'd love to hear about that too.
Well, you've also got to remember that it's not just businesses that we're trying to bring into town. We've also, we tied in with the CDC relative to bringing in composite training into the CDC, which I think is vitally important.
It's going to be very important.
So we would be more and more than happy to do that. Just to throw out some numbers, and for what it's worth, over the last 5 years, I think that the businesses that we've been involved with that have come into Bennington County, roughly 1,000 employees, and a payroll of roughly $44 million. Now, that's pretty important.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it's a benefit to the towns that those companies come into because of the increase in employment. And as Doug said, BCIC from the state didn't get any benefit from that at all. Now, hopefully that's going to change with a new formula that's going to come in, and we're going to be able to raise some more money for them.
Well, that's where you mentioned the name of several legislators, and that's where they come in. This board can do very little about influencing.
No, I understand that. I'm not saying that you should be doing that, because that's not your position, but our legislators are supportive of what we're doing. Senator Leahy, while he's not talking directly with the state, but he certainly is 100%, 110% behind us with our new composite industry in town. So hopefully, within the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see some results of the labor that everybody's put into this. And if you all would like us to come in on a quarterly basis to let you know what's going on, what BCIC is doing, what prospects that we're talking to that we can let you know about, we would be more than happy to do that.
Okay, that's very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, you're welcome to attend our monthly meeting.
Right.
It's nice to sit down in one room, and you've got 80% of the employers in Bennington County sitting in one room.
Right.
And that's quite an impressive number of people sharing ideas and working on better ways to help create jobs within our community.
And just as some of the board members, or most of the board members on our board, are all the major corporations in town. Everyone has a representative on the BCIC board. Tom D. at the hospital is going to be coming on during our next session, which starts in May. So we've got a lot of very influential people that are sitting on the BCIC board, and like yourself, John, and the rest of the board members, they want to see some economic growth in Bennington to help the tax base and the taxpayers and everything else. So with that said, all we're looking for is a moratorium. We're not looking for forgiveness of debt. We're just simply looking for a moratorium that would help us over the next 12 months, and hopefully within that period of time something's going to pop and
Matt?
be self-sufficient.
I get the feeling from this board, and I don't want to go out on a limb and speak for everybody, there's some lack of confidence, I think, in the organization's management. Obviously, you guys are here tonight, and one of the things that would be important for me in making a decision on putting a moratorium on that is, are the board of directors at this point more focused to taking a tighter grip on the reins on day-to-day stuff that goes on with the organization? Or is it still left in the executive director's hands and that's where it lies?
Well, personally, I think that while Peter does do the day-to-day operation, and Peter has a number of contacts that he deals with, not just on the state level, but also on the federal level and other RDCs within the state of Vermont. And we all concur that we think that Peter is doing an excellent job with some of the businesses that he's been able to bring into town, and some of the existing companies that have expanded in town. While we give him a free rein, so to speak, of what he's doing, we do meet, the board meeting meets every month, and we also have an executive committee that sits with Peter on a regular basis. I'm not on the executive committee yet, but I suspect that they meet on a regular basis.
Yes, we do.
And in our estimation, Peter has done a very, very good job in what his goals are, and that is to increase economic development in Bennington County. And our estimation is, and our conclusion is, that he's done a very good job with that. None of us feel that we need to be involved in the day-to-day operation of what's going on in BCIC. Just like I don't know how much you all are involved in the day-to-day operation of the town of Bennington. You rely on Stu to do all of that and him to report back to you. And that's how BCIC runs also. In the last, the numbers I just mentioned to you over the last 5 years, a lot of that, 90% of that is a result of Peter and Rob in the office and talking with these people and trying to put projects together. So do we put a rein on the current officers of BCIC or the executive director? To a certain degree, we do, but we have 100% confidence in what Peter does and what Rob does on a day-to-day basis. Until we find something that is not proper, or things are going south worse than what we thought it was going to be, then maybe at that time we'd have some changes.
And again, I don't think the issues that BCIC has is on the expense side. Our issues are on the revenue side, that we're not compensated for the jobs that we create and the revenues that we generate for this community. And the better job Peter does, it doesn't matter. And so it's the way we are compensated and funded by the state that has to change. Because aside from a salary of an executive director and Rob's part-time, there are no other expenses really. And there's $150 a month rent. I mean, what else is there?
We have fixed expenses like every other business has, but
exactly.
And those fixed expenses are in fact fixed, and they're not. You can't change those. You have insurance, and you have things like that that go up every year. But and we wrestle with that. We have talked about ways that we can do to reduce our expenses, and I think, and not to use a cliche, but our expense budget right now is probably the bottom line. We can't go any further.
Right. And frankly, Peter has even offered to go on a part-time basis to reduce his salary to try and fall in line with where our revenues are, and I would not support that. I said it sends the wrong message. I think that we should be working on fines to have us be funded better as compensation for what we are providing. And by you stepping back, that provides less time, less activity, less economic growth, and that's not what we want to see happen. We want to see more economic growth and more jobs, and we need you to be full-time.
Exactly, yeah.
Any other board members? Doug, thanks for coming in tonight. You've cleared up a lot of things. We'll take up your request for the revision of the loan, the moratorium, and we'll get back to you shortly, address your questions, okay?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, so we've completed everything on the agenda. Just one more time, any board member, other business you want to bring up? Okay, then I do need a motion to go into executive session for contracts.
Some of,
I also have a brief report on a real estate issue that has been.
On real estate, too? Okay,
Yeah.
contracts and real estate?
I'll second that motion for executive session.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you.